We just got some crazy news about the Netflix Marvel characters, and this comes on the heels of some really weird things being said about the Fox X-Men and the Dark Phoenix movie. So I thought this was a good chance to break all of this craziness down. Where are these characters going to end up, and what does the future of the MCU look like after Avengers 4? We are breaking it all down. This is the Nerdy News Rundown. Let's get you filled in. What's up, everybody? Happy Thursday to you. Now, before we get into the news, I need to shout out Harbor Cat, who got the nerd card question correct in the news show from yesterday. You definitely know your stuff when it comes to Marvel, so shout out to you. Even though we don't agree about the spelling thing, you still get your shout out, so there we go. We'll do another nerd card shout out, as always, at the end of this show. So as I said, guys, there's some really weird news out there about different Marvel properties, and ever since the 90s when Marvel sold off the licenses for a lot of its different characters, it's really been a mess when it comes to like, where are these characters at? Why can't they show up in the same movie? Why can't we do a solo Hulk movie? Yada, yada, yada. This all has to do with a lot of the licensing agreements and different things that happened in the 90s when Marvel was selling off its licenses. You know, you fast forward to the MCU, they have this connected thing, and then Disney buys them and they get unlimited money. And ever since that moment, they've been trying to get all of these characters back, and it hasn't always gone their way. Now let's fast forward to this week, right? When we get this announcement that the Marvel Netflix characters might not be allowed to be shown in any iteration on live action for at least 2 years after their contract. Apparently, when they signed this contract with Netflix, part of the contract said that when these characters were done or canceled by Netflix, that they wouldn't get new versions of them for at least 2 years. Now, I think this is because Netflix obviously wants people to still go back and watch Daredevil Season 1, Daredevil Season 2, The Punisher, and all of these things. They want to continue to have a lot of people streaming that on the service, and if they had a new version of these characters, an MCU version of these characters, it would detract a lot of the attention away from these characters. By the way, there's still a lot of confusion as far as like, why did Netflix do this? Why did they cancel all of these shows? The Daredevil cancellation was like a huge deal for people. They were like, wait a minute, that's the best one, the most popular one. You're going to cancel Daredevil? And we know we're getting Punisher and more Jessica Jones, but in all likelihood, all of those shows are going to be canceled as well. Now, we did hear some people at Marvel come out and say it was a total shock to them as well, that they were not putting any pressure on Netflix. And from all the research I've done, I think that's about half true. From what I understand, there was certain restrictions being put into place and less cooperation from Marvel Studios when it came to the Netflix shows. They weren't going to give them more characters to play with. They were being restrictive with what they could mention and things that they could talk about with regards to the cinematic universe in the shows. And this combined with the fact that honestly just the hype and the views of these shows was kind of on the downslope, which really I think is the fault of Netflix for not getting like much better showrunners, tightening up their seasons a bit more, and understanding how to build hype properly for these shows. But in either case, all of those factors kind of combined to make Netflix just say, well, we're not going to continue to spend more and more money on these shows and pay these actors more when it's less beneficial to us. And the bottom line is I think it'll be 2 years before we see MCU versions of any of these characters, unless they can work out some kind of adjustment to the contract that they signed with Netflix, which is always possible when you have unlimited Disney money. But I don't know if that's really a big concern for Disney, because they've got a lot of new properties coming in from the Fox deal. And honestly, with all the streaming stuff and everything they're focused on, their plate's pretty full. So I expect in about 2 years, we'll see these characters start to be sprinkled into other pieces of content, whether or not it's the movies or the shows. The next thing we got to talk about is the Dark Phoenix characters, or the Fox X-Men characters. So recently, just this week, some characters and people were talking about how the Dark Phoenix movie sets up a new future for these young X-Men, the Fox X-Men characters. They have this young group of X-Men, versus the old group of X-Men. First Class had a lot of these characters, and then they're sort of taking some of the characters from First Class, introducing a bunch of new ones. That's the new X-Men. And apparently the plan for Fox was to continue the story with these characters, to have Dark Phoenix be very impactful and perhaps have some impact on future storylines for these characters. But I don't think that's going to be happening now. I mean, what are the odds that Kevin Feige in the Marvel Cinematic Universe is going to keep those versions of the characters? Well, it's very slim. Just look at the example with Spider-Man, and they had a whole new version of Spider-Man come in when they acquired the Spider-Man's rights back to Marvel Studios. I think Feige just wants his own versions of things. And so, I don't think he's going to come right out and say it right away because he doesn't want to hurt the box office for Dark Phoenix. But Dark Phoenix is a swan song. It is the finale of all of the Fox X-Men characters, and I believe we're going to be getting new versions of all those characters except for Deadpool, because he strangely will work in this new version and be able to poke fun at this reality. But yeah, other than Deadpool, we're getting new versions of all of the Fox characters, and I believe it will be probably late 2020 at the earliest before we get any Fantastic Four show or X-Men movie when it comes to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But I believe there is a chance that in 2020 you will start to get mutants mentioned. You might even get some mutant characters in other already established Marvel properties, whether those are shows or movies. But I would say 2021 is probably the year where we will start to see the X-Men within the MCU properly built up. But yeah, that's pretty much the news when it comes to the X-Men and the Fantastic Four characters. I mean, when you just look at all the things Marvel already had in production before this deal finalized with Fox, which it's still technically doing, there's just no way that they have the ability to streamline production and get anything that's like totally about the X-Men or the Fantastic Four done before the end of 2020. I think you're probably looking at 2021. And the last thing we got to talk about is this crazy Spider-Man thing, this Venom situation with Sony. Now, there's a strong argument to be made either way that Sony will take the Spider-Man character back or that they'll leave him at Marvel and they really don't need him. This really is a complicated issue because of the success of Venom. Now, Venom, despite being a movie that the critics by and large did not like, made a ton of money. Like, I'm talking about a ton of money. It's actually made, unless I'm mistaken, more money than any other comic book movie in certain marketplaces like China, and it's just crushing it. I mean, its global box office is very close to $1 billion at this point. It's past many of the Marvel movies. It's past Wonder Woman. It's past many movies. Sony's definitely doing Venom 2. We're definitely getting Carnage. That's pretty sweet. But it is yet to be determined on whether or not Marvel and Sony will come to some kind of an arrangement. Is Venom going to be loosely connected to the MCU? Is it not at all? And Sony decides, hey, we don't need Spider-Man to make billion-dollar comic book movies. We'll just do it with Venom and Morbius and all these other characters. Really, I can see strong arguments made for both sides. Now, the contract for what is going to happen next with that Spider-Man character and Marvel Studios is going to be reinvestigated after Spider-Man Far From Home. So technically, no matter what, there will be at least one more movie with the Tom Holland MCU Spider-Man on the contract. But before they go into production on that movie, they're going to reinvestigate that contract and see, hey, do we want to extend this contract? Do we as Sony want to take Spider-Man back? Do we want to strike an agreement with Marvel where there's going to be a crossover with our Venom universe? So it's really yet to be determined. This is the one that's the most confusing for me. Are we going to be seeing more Spider-Man in the MCU? I really do not know. I tell you this, it's a guarantee we'll be seeing more Marvel movies at Sony using Spider-Man characters. And if Into the Spider-Verse is a big success, you might even see more of those type of movies being done, which, I don't know, might be a good move for Sony. But I really can't tell you what the relationship between Marvel and Sony is going to be like moving forward. So to summarize it all, we're not going to be getting any Punisher, Daredevil, Luke Cage, Jessica Jones, or any Iron Fist in the MCU anytime soon. It will likely be 2 years before you see those characters sprinkled into MCU properties. When it comes to Fox and X-Men, I believe we might get mutants mentioned, maybe even the Fantastic Four mentioned in some Marvel stuff starting in 2019, maybe late 2019, but we're likely not to see anything official or a movie or a show dedicated to those properties until 2021, and the jury is really out when it comes to the Spider-Man character. We're gonna have to see how Spider-Man Far From Home does, how does Avengers Endgame do, and what is Sony's thinking? Like, what are they thinking when it comes to this character? So we're gonna keep an eye on that. But that's pretty much the news, guys. Just wanted to update you on some of the stories that are out there and the impact that they're gonna have on the Marvel Cinematic Universe post Avengers 4 or Avengers Endgame. So let me know what you're thinking. Are you bummed that we won't see any Punisher in the MCU anytime soon? What do you think about the Fox and X-Men properties? Do you think that 2021 date is pretty accurate, but we might get some mutants mentioned? And what the heck do you think is going to be happening with the Spider-Man character when it comes to Marvel and Sony? That one is just so confusing to me. I really don't know what to think about that. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Now let's check that nerd card before we get out of here. I want to know, what is the very first major motion picture based on a Marvel Comics character other than the 1944 Captain America cereal, because that one doesn't count. But yeah, that's what I want to know. What's the first major motion picture made based on Marvel Comics characters? It's a strange one. Let me know what's the answer in the comment section below. And as I always say, guys, I hope you are having an awesome and nerdy day, and I will see you in the next video.